As Americans are waking up this morning, Black Thursday in France. All 8 of the major unions in France have combined together forces to launch a massive protest against the government. They are anticipating millions and millions of French people coming out on the streets and speaking their minds to power, and this means the country will grind to a halt. We're seeing projections that all the refineries in France will be shutting down, in addition to the vast majority of trains and planes, and as well as buses and all other forms of public transportation will grind to a halt. What you must realize is that even though we're being told this is all about the French government raising the retirement age 2 years, this is much more than that. In a country where they are not allowed to protest, the protests and the issues that have been simmering under the surface are bubbling to the surface. It's not so much just we don't like this policy, but rather we don't like this government. The yellow shirts were protesting on the streets for months and months when the government crackdowns came. They were protesting the lockdowns, the mandates, and what they got was the boot in the face. They had the French police and military coming out in force and beating them into submission until it became too painful and too hard to protest. Of course, every vehicle in France has a yellow vest by law. And so the idea of them all putting their yellow vests on and getting out there and marching and using that as a kind of a uniform against the government is something that we should be watching for today. It is not so much a symbol of, once again, a certain policy that we don't like, but rather the government does not represent the people. That every time we keep rising up and protesting the government keeps silencing us, and the people we don't want in power somehow magically keep getting elected. It's a concern that's shared in many other places in the world, and so as we see France going into full-scale protest/rebellion mode today, this Black Thursday, as they're calling it, calling for a full week of protests starting today and a full opposition to the government. The U.S. Embassy in France has issued a warning requesting all Americans to disperse and get away from these protests as best as possible, and even if necessary, leave the country. Everyone outside France is looking on and seeing the problems that are here, while Macron is sitting in Switzerland sipping champagne or whatever he's drinking over there, totally isolated and totally separated from the people. This is what we're seeing, and I expect it to be rather explosive, and the U.S. Embassy doesn't usually issue such warnings needlessly. Especially in major allies like France or the UK, they are very, very careful about the warnings that they issue that could be seen as instigating or destabilizing. The U.S. Embassy issuing this advance warning to U.S. citizens to stay away is certainly a warning to us all. Refineries shutting down, and the biggest question is will these protests spread from France to other countries where people are also upset and feeling like they don't have a voice? Will people, by the millions coming out and voicing their voices, will that inspire others to do the same in other places in the UK, over in other European countries? There's a lot of discontent out there, and with food prices at record highs, with energy prices at record highs, it's understandable to see that people may not be on board with their government's totalitarian policies and brutal procedures. There's been a lot of criminal acts, and there's a lot of information coming out in the last several weeks that has undoubtedly infuriated those who have discovered these things, to see how blatantly and flagrantly and how maliciously their governments have lied to them in order to get them to fall into line. This is concerning, and as we see today, and as we see this unfold this coming week, we'll see what this will mean for history. Will it be just another French protest that blows off without much happening, or will it be bigger than the Yellow Vest protests years back? Friends, if you're in France, you might want to be careful. If you're not part of the protests, you should be careful about where you go and what you're involved with. If you're part of the protests, God bless you, and may God keep you safe. And also that hopefully your voices will be heard, and that people won't be hurt. If you're outside of France, I don't know what country you're listening to this from, whether you need to make a decision about how you feel about your government and whether you feel like you are allowed to speak out or not. This may also have some pretty big supply chain implications, depending on how long those infrastructure facilities are offline, with the oil refineries, whether any pipelines come to a halt, or whether there is any sabotages that happen. Being sabotage is a French word. So if you see anyone without shoes, you might want to ask them what they've been up to. All right, folks, that's what I got for you today. Just you may be seeing this in the news in the next couple hours, the next couple days, and that is kind of what's going on. All right, folks, if you found this video useful or helpful, you might want to check out this other video from me over here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you later. Steve Poplar from the Poplar Report, out.